Welcome to this Quickstart tutorial if you're new to using PomeBlight. I'm going to walk you through registration to understanding the basic way to use the model. And this is for preventing Fireblight infections, and this model helps inform you about the best spray timings. What you're going to have to do when you're a new user is create a free account with Perennia on, well, it's a general Perennia account. You can do so at the Farm Data Tools page. So this is farmdatatools.perennia.ca. And you would go to sign up today, this big red button, and fill in your information to create an account. I already have an account, so I'm going to quickly jump over to the tab where I've already signed in. This is what you would see when you sign in, the dashboard. And then along the left-hand side, there's a big blue panel that houses all of the tools that are on Farm Data Tools. And PomeBlight is one of those. You can expand the panel to see the text so that you can quickly find PomeBlight. I'm going to click on that just to show you. We need to set this up first for you because if you're brand new, you're not going to have these drop-down options in the menu. These need to be created in the settings. So that's what we're going to work on doing first. So along the bottom left-hand side, there's a gear, and this is the settings area. So go ahead and click on settings. When you have a new account, I think it comes with a default business, but if you don't have a business showing already, then you can click on this button and create a business. But if you already have a business, you can go ahead and click the drop-down accordion on the business you want to work in. And then this is where we're going to set up the weather stations that are going to be run with your Fireblight prediction tool known as PomeBlight. Under this area, we're going to create a farm location first of all. This is for people who have farms in very different areas and want to keep them separate. So you may have a farm in Atlanta and one over in Berwick as well. So you could say like Atlanta farm. You do have to say the province. I'm going to choose Nova Scotia, but the rest of the information isn't essential. It's just for your own records, keeping everything organized. So I've created that Atlanta farm. And then there's another accordion here that you have to click because we have to create a field. And the field is the specific weather station that you want to monitor with. So we could say the Atlanta NSFGA weather station, crops, we'll say like general apple. We don't want to get too specific. So I'm going to choose the crop type apple. This matters because if you were to choose pear, then it's running a different Fireblight model. So select apple or pear. And then the forecast station, these are the Environment Canada weather stations. So for the Annapolis Valley, we have the Greenwood station and the Kentville station. So choose whichever one is closest to you, which one you rely on. For the Davis stations, these are all on the map here, so you could zoom in and see all of the available stations and choose the one that's closest to you. I'm going to choose the Atlanta NSFGA station and create that field. So you can see I have that field now. You can continue adding fields if you wanted to monitor weather stations in other areas. And you could also create different farm locations, like I said, if you want to separate them. Or maybe you want to separate your apple locations from your pear locations. It's really up to you how you want to organize it. We've just created some flexibility with the different levels in this setting area. Now that we've set up the field, I'm going to go over to PomeBlight again. And I was working under the test business that I had created there. And here's the Atlanta farm that I just set up. So I'm going to select Atlanta farm, and the field was the Atlanta NSFGA. And we're going to go in the current growing year, 2026. So as soon as I select all those options, now it's always going to be pre-populated. Like you only have to set that up once, and then you can always just visit PomeBlight, and that weather station is always going to be available to you. So I'm just going to scroll down here so you can see what we're going to walk through. First of all, there's current conditions. So that Atlanta NSFGA station, it's currently reading 13.1 degrees. That's handy if you just want to check in on that weather station. There's a little slight delay here. So it's saying that it last updated at 2:30 p.m. So that's something to be aware of. Usually the weather station would say healthy. So that's one way you can make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information. So we can check in on that weather station. Another point I want to mention is the reason we're showing the current conditions is so that you can make sure what's showing in the model is like the warmest temperature of the day. So if you're checking it, um, the Davis weather stations can override the forecast is the point I want to make here. So if the Environment Canada weather forecast says that today we're going to have a maximum temperature of 15 degrees, the Davis weather stations are supposed to override that if they are recording temperatures above 15 degrees. So it's currently 13.1. That means we haven't exceeded the daily high. So that is working correctly. You'll see the minimum temperature is 3.3 degrees because that was recorded this morning when it was really cold this morning, and that was cooler than the Environment Canada forecast. So it did override that cool temperature. There's a little summary at the top here. We're going to go back to this because it makes more sense once the model starts running. Now I'm going to scroll down to the forecast. The forecast is the main section of the model that you're going to look at, which is why it's showing up first before the historical section, which is next. And it's showing, yeah, it's showing your forecast from Environment Canada. You can edit this area here, but I want to make it clear that your edits are not saved in the forecast section. And the reason for this is because we don't want it to override what actually becomes observed in the historical records. So you can edit away for the current day. That is not going to be saved in the future. So even if you were to input blossom in the forecast, that's not going to carry through. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is create a fake situation because we're still relatively early in the season and we're getting cold temperatures. It's hard to see how the model is actually going to react with given temperatures because there's not going to be bacterial growth. So I'm going to put in some warm temperatures to give you an example. What we need to do first to trigger the model is to tell the model that blossom phenology has begun because we can only have Fireblight blossom infections when the blossoms are open. So you can edit the phenology. What I'm going to do is scroll down to the historical records and say, for example, that blossom began on May 10th, and I would hit save. And the reason I wanted to show you this in the historical is because that is going to save, and that is going to apply to all of the following dates until you tell it to stop. So that triggers the model to continue running. You can put Blossom, say like Blossom has really just begun. So I'm going to hit undo there. You could put it in the forecast if you know you just saw it on the current date, that's fine. It's just not going to save on the next day, so you are going to have to reapply that. So that's just something to be aware of. It will save when once you record it in your historical records. Okay, so working with Blossom phenology here, that's when the model begins, and you can see that the EIP value, which is telling us the bacterial population, it was not calculating before Blossom, so at the pre-Blossom stage. But once we hit blossom, now it is calculating. It's just 0 right now because the temperatures are so low. So that's why I'm going to go in and put some artificially high temperatures in here just to show you what happens. So you can edit that, you can hit save. Okay, so you always have to hit the check mark to save it. You can see all of the entries that have been edited because an undo button appears, just so you don't forget that you've made that change, and you can always revert to the previous temperature. Okay, so now we're getting some action from the model here because the temperatures are higher. And okay, where do we begin here? So you might have noticed that once I hit in the Blossom phenology, that the text turned red. And there's a reason for that because Blossom is required for Fireblight infection. So we're saying it's red because that's one of the factors that has been met. There's 4 total factors that are needed for Fireblight infection. So it's the blossom. It's also a wetting event. So that can either be a rainfall or a dew. So rainfall is being shown in red there as well. A dew, you would have to edit that. The weather stations are not recording dew events. That's because we can't rely on the leaf wetness sensors to be sensitive enough for the dew, or they may be oversensitive. So that has to rely on your own observations. So you could edit that and say that yes, a dew has happened. Okay, so that's blossom, wetting event. The third factor is average temperature. So if the average temperature is above 15.6 degrees Celsius, then that is a high enough temperature for an infection event to happen. So because we're at 20 degrees in this example, then that turns red because that is a third factor that's been met. And the fourth factor for infection is the EIP population. So that is the bacterial population. And that builds up over time. And when that number reaches 100 or above, that's when there's enough bacteria present on the flower to cause epidemic levels of infection. So that 100 is what we want to be concerned about. In terms of the math for this model, you're never going to get a perfect 100. So you'll often see 98. 98 to me is getting uncomfortably close to 100. And that would be an action level that I would consider applying an antibiotic for. So you really want to monitor the EIP level. I find that's a very important part of the model because it doesn't necessarily matter if you have, the other factors present. If you've got a really low bacterial population, but once you start getting into high bacterial populations, that's when you're kind of on the edge of your seat, waiting to see if there could be a wetting event or, to trigger an infection or just a high enough average temperature. So that EIP level is the most concerning piece. The infection risk is output on the side here. So on the first date, it was high because there were, um, let's see, okay, so there was blossom, so that's one factor. There was a wetting event, and this is something I need to explain because there's an asterisk there. Because rain, if you have on the previous date, if you have more than 2.5 millimeters of rain, that is enough to keep the inside of the flower wet and it triggers wetting for the following day. So when I look at May the 12th, there was enough rain to wet the inside of a flower if there was a flower present to trigger for the following day. So we've got blossom, wetting, and then an average temperature that was high enough. But that's only 3 factors because the bacterial population wasn't high enough yet. So it's a high risk, but it's technically not an infection. The following date, though, with the heat that I plugged in for the second day there would be enough to raise the bacterial population to cause an infection with all of the 4 factors present. So that is how you would read that model. If you want to see what happens when you apply an antibiotic spray, that's where you would edit the row and select yes on antibiotic spray. And then it knocks your bacterial population to zero because it's killing the bacteria. And with my artificially high temperatures, it jumps back up again for the following day. But that is how you would take a look at that. The objective overall is to monitor that infection risk, but you really need to be aware of the four factors and which ones are missing to cause an infection event. And that's by looking at the red text on any individual row. Now, I put in artificially warm temperatures, but the reason why we made it editable is that you might say, what happens if the temperature is like a degree or two warmer than the forecast when we're actually in the bloom season? That's how you would edit and see how comfortable you are with where the bacterial growth is at in that EIP value. Now, if you ever forget what any of these mean, you can always hover over them. You've probably seen that as my cursor's been going around. You can read about it here. You can also reach out to me. I'm really happy to explain it to help you get up and running and make sure that you're comfortable with the system. Now I want to go back up to the summary. You can see because I triggered the model with that blossom phenology, now it's giving you a 7-day risk forecast. You can hover over it, seeing there's a high, and infection risk and so on. And it's telling you most conditions met, evaluate risk. So there's a little bit of guidance there. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to go through. So let me know if you have any questions, and hopefully that gets you up and running quickly. Thank you.